I'm going to call, oh my, to order our, there is an echo, and I find it distracting. Oh, that's so much better, thank you. Okay, I'm calling to order our Mountain Shasta Planning Commission regular meeting for Tuesday, February 20th, 2024, and we're going to start with the flag salute. Okay. Item 2, roll call. Jeff, please.
Yes. Commissioner Boinger. Commissioner Beck.
Present.
Commissioner McDowell.
Here.
Commissioner Sarian.
Here.
Commissioner Higuera. Chair Finley.
And I'm here. So we're missing 2, but we have a quorum with 4 of us. Public comment is our next item. Time set aside for folks to address the Planning Commission on matters that are not on our regular agenda. I don't have anybody here in the audience. Has anybody raised their hand from
Nobody is listening.
out? Oh, there is.
Oh,
And would they like to speak to us?
no hands are raised.
No hands are raised? Okay. Then I'll move on to item 4, which is our consent agenda for approval of the minutes from our January 16th, 2024 meeting. Commissioners, is that acceptable to leave it on the consent agenda unless there are changes that we need to make? And if there's no changes, then I would just need a motion.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Should I be closer to the mic?
I think the monitor's not up very loud.
Can,
Anyway, are you asking for a motion?
so yeah, if we don't need to remove this from the consent agenda, then can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of January 16th.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
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 I don't
Opposed?
think I can vote, can I?
You can, as I
Oh,
learned recently. Okay, motion passes unanimously to pass our consent agenda for the approval of the minutes of our January 16th meeting. Item number 5, the reason we're mostly here this evening is regarding progress on our objective design standards. Jeff, would you like to
Yeah, I'll
explain
take
this
it
to
away.
us? Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm pulling up the staff report in front of me so everyone at home can see. I'll follow along here for your benefit and give you a quick overview of where we stand with the subcommittee, which consists of Commissioner Sarian, Chair Finling, and Commissioner McDowell. As you all recall, Mr. Beck, Commissioner Beck, is the sole beneficiary of this evening's presentation.
Well, and the people who are listening, hopefully.
One member of the public that's decided to join us. With that in mind, I'll go through rather quickly, and we'll turn it over to you for kind of a Q&A. So this is more educational with respect to process, what we've done for 3 meetings as a subcommittee, where we have decided that it's time to get information in from you and recommendations from the broader commission on where to and how to proceed next with respect to not only the contents and direction of the objective design standards themselves, but a little bit of public outreach that we'd like to undertake over the course of the next, hopefully 6 or less months. So keep that in mind as we move forward here. So as we know, objective design standards are mandated by state law for ministerial review of qualifying housing projects. We talked a lot about that during the housing element implementation or adoption cycle. So we're very clear that the statutory intent and the intent of our policy in the housing element is to develop a set of objective standards that are to be applied to qualifying affordable housing projects only. So market rate projects will be subject to the same discretionary process under the same set of guidelines that are before you tonight that were adopted back in June 14 of 2010. I identify for you in the staff report in some detail that particular policy which guides and directs our implementation of the objective design standards moving forward. What I will remind you of is that on November 28th, the Planning Commission did formulate the subcommittee of the commissioners with us here this evening. We've met on 3 occasions. The staff report identifies the purpose of those meetings, kind of summarizes some of the content and the discussion. It concluded on February 14th, where we reviewed the format and outline of an ODS. I'm calling ODS abbreviation for Objective Design Standards moving forward, where we had a discussion about the process to date and where to go next. Process to date was really to take the existing design guidelines intent, translate those from subjective guideline to objective standard, and then combine those within a standard format of objective design standards, which are outlined in the staff report. And then also season that from within the body of the municipal code. By that I mean there's a whole bunch of information in our code which speaks to design guidelines. I highlight that in the attachment in a table of the staff report, and the intent of that exercise is to mine, if you will, the entire contents of that set of regulations and infuse our objective design standards with that benefit. And I'll touch on that in a little bit, because there's a bunch of it in there, and I think it's really important stuff not to lose sight of as we try to co-locate all things design within a set of measurable standards. I want to draw your attention to step 1 on page 4 of the packet, page 2 of the staff report, where we talk about, I summarize the overview of review and adoption process. And I want to maybe put a pin in this right now and go back through, if need be, to talk in detail about some of these overarching tools that we might want to use to engage the community. I don't want to get bogged down in this right now, but for the sake of our discussion tonight, just keep in mind as we develop these standards, there's going to be a point at which we're going to be far enough along that we're going to have enough to go out to the public to get some reaction on and from the public. We don't want to go out too soon because there's not enough substance to really sink their teeth into it. So keep that in mind as we employ these tools. Planning Commission hearings, I'm thinking maybe 3 of them at most. Same with City Council hearings, probably 3 to get through. Those would be stacked alternately. So that's really a 6-month time frame within which we can pepper a few community events. So the overarching goal is to really kind of power through a lot of what I'm about to talk about and really focus some community events within that 6-month time frame. Keeping in mind that these will all be public hearings. So you'll have 3 Planning Commission public hearings and 3 separate City Council public hearings. So that gives us really 6 cracks at this thing in a public forum. As you know, those things tend to be stacked with other agenda items, so it doesn't give the public a whole lot of time and bandwidth to really engage on the subject. So that's why I'm thinking maybe an open house, maybe a web-based outreach, maybe a public hearing that's separate and distinct. So
Actually, has a decent response around here.
right. Item 2 is a summary of the municipal code regulatory context as inputs for developing the ODS. And as I mentioned, we've got the guidelines to work with. The guidelines themselves are very kind of bifurcated into two parts. There's the residential and the non-residential part. The residential part goes into some level of detail, but frankly not as much detail as does some of the non-residential stuff, and also some of the character attributes on the front end of the guidelines themselves. So it really does go into a lot of detail about theme and design and character that exists in the community today. And I think there's value in some of that intent to pull into the guidelines themselves. So that's a good source. I've outlined what some of those are. So those things are streetscape, landscaping, materials, site planning, building form, and then those are broken into non-residential and residential bits. So we'll be looking at that to kind of mine those and pull them in. The second source document would be the municipal code itself. So those are chapters that I've outlined in the attachment at the end of the document. I won't go into details on those right now, but I will hold that aside for some in-depth conversation should we want to go there tonight. So there are separate components within the municipal code, and this is not unusual. Lots of cities have design, site planning, character, regulatory, site dynamics. All that stuff's controlled in different parts of the code. Fences, landscaping, lighting, parking, architectural review, and then our base zone standards, which talk about height and setback and all that stuff. All that layered together, if you could have a set of glasses that could see it all, you'd put it on and you'd begin to sort of focus on the key things that you want to pull and dump into a single source document. That's kind of the overarching purpose of the objective design standards, is to, instead of having all these separate little corners of our code that speak to design, why not extract it and locate it under one source document or one section of code? So that's the overarching intent. The format that's identified in subsection C there, standard of ODS format, is standard ODS format. This is a format that has been pretty conventional within the industry since 2017-18, when objective design standards were mandated for ministerial review. So I've applied this same format in 2 previous jurisdictions, and I offer this as a starting place for our discussions. The subcommittee kind of ran this up and down and looked at it from different sides. We looked at what we kind of called the full meal deal, if you will, a very rich, dense, character-defining set of standards, or something lighter, which more restricts to, within a 3-dimensional envelope, architectural expression, which doesn't go so far as to say, you got to have a roof pitch of this, and you got to have a character element of this to pull off something called the typology or the character of architecture, or the style of architecture that we want to see in our community. And as you all know, we've got something called Alpine theme here, which would be the case in point for that effort. And that's really the focal point of this entire conversation, is how far do we feel these standards should reach toward setting a standard for whatever architectural character and theme can be captured by Alpine. And the risk is you go too far, you create a cookie cutter set of character standards, and you end up with Disneyland. And you also end up with something that is expensive to build, and you've defeated the purpose of objective design standards, which, as we all know, are initially to be applied to affordable housing projects only. So there's a tension there. We've got to explore that. So the standard ODS format consists of site design, where the buildings sit on the site, building placement, access, parking, landscaping, and lighting. Second set would be focusing on the buildings themselves and characterizing what those facades look like on those buildings, the shape of the mass, gabled or flat roofed, for example, the roof pitch itself. Flat roofs or steep roofs. Steeper roofs are more character-defining forms within an alpine theme to shed snow, for example. However, we have flat roofs in town. Do we want to go so far as to, in a way, create a standard that precludes flat roofs from being delivered, or do we want to allow those to be developed because, or delivered because they are contemporary in nature and they can be done very well? Facade, character, windows, and materials typically fall into those building design category elements. Then there's something called the frontage standards. What happens between the building, the public-facing side of that building with respect to the entrance orientations, stoops, covers, arcades, if you will, for some types of mixed-use projects, and terraces and so on. So it's really about what it looks like on the front side. Little bit of landscape treatment and the site design and the frontage standards tend to mutually reinforce in that regard. So that's where you pull in the fence standards and the landscaping standards to make sure that the general intent is of visual transparency or eyes-on between the public and the private realm. There's a lot of, especially in higher density mixed-use contexts, the idea that you want your active floor area engaging the public realm. You don't want an 8-foot fence and a privatized frontage. You get more community engagement, more active, more vital community public spaces or public-facing spaces with that kind of site configuration. And then finally, the architectural theme component or alpine theme, defining what the extent or the reach of those codes is. And as I mentioned, back to the full meal deal kind of thing, or the light version of standards. We have examples of both out there, far and wide. The one that I'm most familiar with is from Fairfax, California, which is in Marin, where they really went all in on defining character. They actually went down into the nitty-gritty and designed facades and massing and character and style for almost 12 different types of architectural or housing product types, and in mixed use and commercial product types that were conventionally delivered by both affordable housing developers and market rate housing developers. So they really threw the net awfully wide, ratcheted down creativity to a set of prescribed standards. On the other hand, my most recent experience with the city of Calistoga, where they developed what I'm going to call the sort of objective design standards light version, which really is a little more than identifying where the building sits on the site, what the setbacks are, what the heights of surrounding elements like fences and hedges are, a little bit of the pedestrian access between the public realm and the primary entrance of buildings, and a little bit of materials and a little bit of character treatment on the front side. So active floor area, windows, proportions, orientation, and that kind of thing. They left, however, character and style and architectural treatment off the table for objective design standards. And they said, let the market deliver it. We like creative expression in the field of architecture, and we want to inspire more of it. And we think we can get more affordable housing by doing that, or less with more, or more architecture that's affordable with less standard thrown at it. So that was the logic there. I will refer to the design regulations and city policy document, and quickly I'll just go through that so we all know where all the design-related standards are nested within the code. I'll zoom out a little bit just to get at one glance at this thing, but basically the standards are found in 1816, our base zones chapter, chapter 1870, which is the size restriction. There's a great deal of information in that chapter. I've put check marks in the left column, or excuse me, throughout the columns there under each code chapter. And in the left column are all the standards and guidelines that are design related. 1829 is our conditional use chapter. The 1860 is design review chapter. And then 1829, yeah, conditional use, I already said that. And then general plan and then by comparison, objective design standards. So you can see that what we've done is pull all of the design-related standards that exist and some of the criteria that exist. Those are non-measurable elements that are in our guidelines, and pull those all into our objective design standards. And ultimately, based on both commission and council direction and vetted through community engagement, we'll get some recommendations from you all and the public on, again, the reach. How far do we want to go with these things? Everything upstream of character, architectural style, I feel very comfortable in saying that it exists in both our guidelines. There's good stuff in here to pull from. It's not a surprise. We've already vetted it. People support it. And also within the municipal code in these chapters. The one outstanding element, and 90%, I believe, of what we really ought to be focusing on from this point forward, is the extent to which we reach into character. That's my spiel, and I'll shut up and listen to you guys for a minute and engage as much as you want.
Paul?
Well, I think we need this because I don't think we have a really consistent theme. Everything from City Hall down to Papa Murphy's, and then one or two buildings past is flat roof. Maple Street's a little bit different. And then once you go south on Mount Shasta Boulevard, everything is different. We don't really have a design standard in my mind, although I guess you could say it roughly fits Alpine, but not really. I mean, Alpine to me is everything would look like the House of Ski used to 20-something years ago, or 30 or whatever, you know, A-frame-ish looking things. And some buildings have the Black Bear Gallery, kind of, and then that one building north of there where Shasta Visions is. That's, to me, that's Alpine theme for a three-story, but we don't really have that. We talk about Alpine theme. I'm not sure if we've hit the mark on that. So that's it. Well, pretty much all I have to say on that. So it almost leads me to believe, though, that we should have a different standard depending on what part of town. So you match up with everything around you, so everything over here should look like this, because you don't want something that looks like a half a mile down Mount Shasta Boulevard. I don't know. It's just going to continue to, in my mind, to confuse the theme. So anyway, that's it.
I will note that we do have 3 participants in Zoom, so you might
good.
want to give anyone out there a chance to speak up, and I'll defer to you, Chair Findling, on when you want to do that.
Oh, yeah, thanks. I wanted to hear from commissioners first, and then definitely hoping folks out there would like to let us know what they think so far. Tucson, do you want to chime in?
I don't have any comments right now.
Okay.
No,
don't
have any.
Well, of course I do. Just quick, and maybe, I don't know, from some context, there's a couple things. I guess my thoughts are that, you know, we have, as you've pointed out, we have a lot of substance so far, and it seems to me that, you know, we can't really veer away from kind of what we already have. We're trying to translate our existing guidelines and code into something objective. I think to your point, Paul, you know, how many years have we talked about Alpine theme? And it's super hard to pin down because we have examples of buildings that may not fit Alpine, but I think that they add an important and unique character to our streetscape.
Well, yeah, maybe like the credit union up off of Chestnut, and then the dentist office on, is it Pine?
There's one on Pine.
Those don't, they're not bad-looking buildings at all, but to me, neither of those are like Alpine.
Right, or Berryvale.
So-
Doesn't look very Alpine, and yet with the murals and the way they've taken care of it, it's a lovely piece of our streetscape.
But that's back to the flat roof theme that's further down, you know, Whiskey Row, you know, the whole center of town. So it fits with that, but yeah. So it seems like we kind of have to really define that and then decide, like, how much we want to push, how much we want to box everything into a certain style? Or should we have everything from henceforth conform to whatever our idea of alpine theme is? So
That, I think, is our challenge. Definitely. I wondered also, I think in our existing code, I have the sense that the beginning part that talks about, I guess the aspirational examples, I think my thought was that applied generally to residential still, even though, it's in the beginning and the residential is somewhat separate. I was assuming that still applied. And just one other piece, a decision that we made, I think that it might be worthy, that we'll want input on is we decided that we would use the objective design standards for duplexes and everything bigger. So we didn't choose to apply them to single-family homes, but we did for duplexes and then on up to whatever scale. And Jeff did a really good job of explaining a situation why we might want to do that. And if you would do that for us again, Jeff, I think that'd be helpful to see how we thought about it and how we got there. Because I thought that's an important change, I think, that's worth noting.
Yeah, sure. So the threshold for review or triggering review in our code currently, and it's specified in the top part of this page, says that architectural review applies to all development except duplexes, triplexes in R1 and R2. So right now you get a pass regardless. In the future, and I've seen this elsewhere, particularly with the advent of recent law, state law, SB 9 and 10 in particular, where you can subdivide pretty standard R1 lots, so 5 to 10,000 square feet, down to as small as 1,200 square feet per lot and allowing an 800 square foot unit. You can do a duplex, do a junior ADU, and an ADU in each unit. So now you've got where you used to have R1 zoning on a 10,000 square foot lot, you can quickly do the math and arrive at densities which are 4 times greater than conventional R1 zoning. If someone were to come to town and deliver that and deed restrict it to 20% of the number of units in any given development program, they would be allowed a density bonus and they would be allowed ministerial review subject to objective design standards. So the committee was thinking after that scenario that it would be wise for us to lower the standard or the threshold for review to capture more projects, particularly those that are, to Melanie's point, duplex and above, leaving single-family dwellings and leaving ADUs off of the review table. So those would be exempted from design review under that scenario. And so that was the thought, was moving more in that direction of capturing more review, not less, which I think is, from my perspective, a staff perspective, makes sense because of the trend of development applications, the, if you will, holding capacity or development capacity of R1 lots being greater than, under that development scenario, than any other zoning, because we've got more of it. Typically 75 to 80% of any typical city is R1 zoning. So you can see that's why the state law has been driving development to R1 zoning. And it would behoove us, I believe, to ensure that we have rigorous design review on those parcels, particularly under those density scenarios.
Okay, so that's it for me. I would love to hear from folks if they would like to chime in on this agenda item. Has anybody raised their hand?
Yes, Johanna Windswept has got her hand raised there.
Okay, Johanna, please let us know. Come on in. You've got 3 minutes. I don't hear her. And I still don't hear her. Johanna?
Is that Joanna Altarfer? She usually has a hard time connecting in.
Johanna, are you muted
I think it's Joanna.
on your end? We don't hear you.
Let's maybe let her try to sort it out. Does anybody else have their hand up?
She sent a note saying, "I am unmuted and usually have no issues." Right? We have heard you speak before from your location, so I'm surprised we're not getting you now. But everything looks good on our side.
I remember her having trouble logging in a couple times.
Absent your ability to get here now, verbally at least, maybe you could come by City Hall or call or meet with me or email or whatever you think is most convenient, and we can get your input on these matters before we move forward or as we move forward.
Right, this is definitely not the only time to chime in. As Jeff mentioned, we're hoping to have lots of opportunity for the public to help us through this process. So let's see, has anybody else raised their hand?
She has a comment that she's typed in, and this might be a good way to get there.
Okay.
I think this will be a great clarifying document. If there is discrepancy, which document will prevail? Will this go to a vote? Is this only for new construction, not remodeling? So I think I can take a pass at that. If there is a discrepancy, which document will prevail? I presume that you mean a discrepancy between whatever is adopted and what currently exists in the municipal code or general plan. I can tell you that the purpose of this effort will be to very thoroughly ensure that there is no discrepancy with respect to design intent or standard, but if there is, it would depend on where the discrepancy lies. If it's in the municipal code in this chapter, it would prevail. It is more specific to design and the purpose and intent of design regulations within objective design standards would prevail over any other municipal code chapter that is design related. With respect to new construction or remodeling, the current trigger is any exterior alteration to a structure. So that would be, unless it's remodel that is considered maintenance, repair, and those examples would be roofs and windows, siding, that kind of thing. So if there is no change to the architectural character from that exterior alteration, then it would be exempt from design review. There is some discretion there, and that discretion lies with the planner's decision, and of course is appealable to Planning Commission and subsequently to City Council. So all the appeal provisions would remain intact. Yeah, so I think that according to your comments that I'm reading, it seems like that might have answered your question. Is that true, Joanna? Looks like that got it. So.
Okay, and did anyone else in the audience want to speak to us?
I see no other hands raised.
Okay. Commissioners, any other thoughts? I mean, I guess partly it is.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Joanna just has one more thing. It says maybe there should be some threshold of 35% or something for repairs. We can explore that. There are conventional thresholds that are valuation-based or percentage-based within architectural renovation projects. So if you do come in and, for example, swap out exterior systems on your building in a like-for-like fashion, but you can't do exactly like-for-like. Window systems, roof material, et cetera, siding material doesn't quite align or match. You're given an exception up to a certain valuation of the project. So if anything, one of my previous jurisdictions, there was a number of $150,000. It was somewhat arbitrary, but if you stayed below that threshold, you got a free pass through architectural review. If you did 35%, I'm just picking Joanna's number as a recommendation, or some percentage less of the surface area of the structure, you were given a pass. Both of those are calculable, quantifiable, and could be applied to renovation projects. So
This would be taking an existing, say, fourplex and then turning it into an affordable fourplex and
or a school.
or converting an existing
Or a motel.
structure. And the conversion of use wouldn't naturally be a trigger to kick in the design standards?
No, but it would be a trigger for conditional use permit. And if they did, the Nest is a very good example. So previous conditional use permit process, they came in, they were exempt from design review because they did check the boxes for literally swapping out the exact same windows or very, very close, roof repair, siding repair, and paint, all of which, as we know, those of us who have stared at the Nest for long enough understand that maintenance and repair has been deferred for many, many years. What they were proposing remedied that. And I could see a similar situation where some of our cottage industry visitor serving facilities make good affordable housing projects. They could come in and swap those out, add front porches to them, change some character defining features to maybe remove less of the motel-esque components of their facades, make them look more privatized, potentially front stoops, et cetera. You would quickly rise to a level of either valuation or percentage differentiation or improvement or change. And you might want to throw a number at that to say that anything above a certain number would be subject to design review. So I can add that to our exceptions. As you know, we do have an exceptions chapter in the standard objective design standards contents, which we've talked about at the subcommittee level. What happens when a project comes in with density bonus and we're having to grant certain concessions of our zoning code, again, by density bonus housing law, which is state law for many, many, many decades. So certain concessions are by law granted. For example, parking typically is sometimes setback, sometimes height, sometimes roof form and character. So design elements would be part of that. And you could certainly say that to get to a density to make a conversion project like a motel to multifamily pencil, you would need to grant certain design-related concessions. It might be wise to throw in a percentage exception for that. So we'll put that in the mix for your consideration.
It'd be good to think about it. Yeah, I think that is a good point. Okay.
And again, remodels would fall under that. So not only repairs, but that's where a repair becomes a remodel when typically you add more floor area. Most remodels have appendages added to their buildings, their primary mass. Secondary masses are sort of appended to these things, and you add floor area that would give the biggest bang for the value buck of, a bathroom, a bedroom, a kitchen. And in that case, that valuation, that footprint, that floor area could be added to an exception category and be subject to design review.
Yeah, right. Well, we certainly would want to encourage a project like that. But yeah, figure out how to get good design at the same time. All right, commissioners, well, Paul.
Vicky Gold.
Oh, Vicky does want it. Oh, okay. Then please do, Vicky.
Vicky, can you hear us? We can't hear you yet.
It's got to be us then, if it's two people in a row, you would think.
Well, so Joanna says that she can hear Vicky, but we're the only ones left out right now, so.
Oh, that's
We're working on it,
interesting.
So it's on our side. They're working on the wires, Vicky. over here.
There's a flurry of activity trying to get
Sorry
your
about that,
voice
you guys.
to
We'll
us.
try to get it together here.
Awkward silence.
Well, if we have to wait, I don't mind.
Yeah, so Vicky can hear Joanna, and Joanna can hear Vicky. Sorry, you guys. We've never had this before, at least since I've been here, so I've
Now it seems like a new one to me, too.
Don't you have the meeting up on your Apple computer? Can you hear them on that computer?
You'd have to,
So if I,
Oh, yeah, that's not great.
that won't work. I thought about that, but I did before. It's like an echo chamber. Sorry, you guys. Okay, I can translate, again, via messaging here. Vicky's commenting that I think most of us are concerned about height with density bonus. We want to see the mountain, and that is our alpine design too. So my response to that is density bonus, as you know, is granted in a scale of applicability. It's based on affordability. The lower the affordability, that is, let me rephrase, the less affordability delivered by a project demands less concession in our zoning code. More affordability demands more concession. So if you come in with a 20% affordable project, you get roughly a 20% density bonus. A 100% affordable project gets a 100% density bonus. If you add that or multiply that by the base zone of 20 units an acre, you can quickly see that you're upwards of nearly 40 units an acre for a 100% affordable housing project. That density is delivered in a three-dimensional envelope or constructed in a three-dimensional envelope, both footprint and height. So by mandate, statutory mandate, we need to deliver, that is the city, needs to ensure that we concede enough of our standards to allow that density bonus in a three-dimensional manner. If the intent is to preserve the vertical element of that envelope, then we're going to prioritize the horizontal element of that envelope and sacrifice or concede setback, lot area coverage, landscaping percentage, and potentially even open space on site at the risk of preservation of the footprint or the horizontal ground plane impacts that would result. The adage that cities grow up, not out, as applied to that continuum. One could argue that sacrificing horizontal land area is cumulative over time and will add up to pressuring our city limits and our urban growth boundaries by extrapolation. So I think that while vertical preservation of view corridors is certainly a viable and likely mandate, and even a priority mandate that could result from this effort, keep in mind that there's always the consequence that we hope, and this is my job, I think, in this conversation, is understood and intentional, and not accidental and unintentional. So that's my job. I'll make sure that as we move forward with this, that under development scenarios, if you sacrifice the horizontal or the vertical, what is the cumulative effect over time? Might be incremental, might not be a big deal, but it will set into motion precedent on both a small infill scale and also a large scale, and that has consequences.
And we currently have height restrictions in the city, in all zones. And would that be a concession, that we would concede additional height if there were a density bonus situation?
Yeah, so, vertical height concessions, if you can't deliver the horizontal, envelope to capture that density increase, then you by law need to deliver that density standard, whether it's horizontal or vertical. Yeah, so you would need to go higher.
Than our current standards?
Than our current, yes, height standards in our base zones, yes. However, that needs to be subject to all of the standards that apply. So if these are measurable, objective standards that are in our municipal code and our general plan, they all apply. These projects, in order to qualify for density bonuses, need to be what are called code-compliant projects. They need to conform on all levels with both general plan standards. So policies typically are the purview, goals, policies, objectives, and programs are all the purview of our general plan. However, there are some metrics, some measurable standards that exist in the general plan. Those apply as well. Preservation of wetlands is a good example. And a code-compliant project needs to comply with all of those. And if it does, then it delivers 100% affordability, then we need to all discuss and determine, hopefully through this set of regulations, which ones we're going to concede.
Is fire fighting capability because of the height of a building an issue?
That can be applied to restrict height, yes. Access to and fighting capacity, firefighting and fire hardening capacity, defensibility, yes, it's viable to restrict the height of a building presently. Life, health, safety prevails presently legislatively, yes.
Do we have a number for that?
I'm sorry, a number?
The height?
I don't presently. I haven't crossed that bridge yet here. That'd be a good one to find. I can add that to my list.
Tucson, you
Could
look-
we,
yeah.
could we go as far as delineate properties that are within a view corridor that we say is a view corridor and can't go up above a certain height?
View corridors can be protected as a part of an objective design standard measurement, yes.
That's something we should talk about further.
Well, I know we've got trees that affect.
Yeah, there's, I don't know. I don't like this argument of the view of the mountain because it's very limited in town where there's actually views of the mountain.
Seasonally changing.
Well, anything south of Lake Street and east of Mount Shasta Boulevard, there's no view of the mountain.
I'm talking more.
No, like Lake
views
Street,
that are-
Alma
yeah,
Street.
the views that are already there, up the street.
Yeah, no,
That's
like, if there's a 50-foot building on South A, what view is it obstructing?
Right. So that's what I'm saying. If we can look at, okay, we want to preserve the view up Lake Street
Yeah,
or up,
Alma, Ivy.
yeah. And.
Or Castle.
A certain distance from
Yeah.
the road,
Yeah.
out. We could delineate that, is what I'm getting at.
Right. And, again, trees affect that, having had a view change because of my neighbor's trees growing. Well, it's,
Well, eventually the trees will block everybody's view.
but then we cut down trees for fire or, there's just, it moves. Or this big tree just came off the corner of Ivy, Rockfellow, and Kenneth Way, just boom, opened up that view.
Yep.
Some big trees do come out, too.
There are a few trickling comments here from Vicki Gold.
Well, that seems to work, so let's do that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll keep doing this here.
Are you good? Yeah?
Oh, we have,
Try again, Vicki.
oh my gosh, we can hear her.
Yeah?
Yes.
Yes.
We hear you.
Fabulous. Okay. Thank you so much for addressing the view sheds downtown and the possibility that Tucson brought up about a corridor. I have been hoping that this would happen because every beautiful, unique tourist place does have some kind of restrictive area, whether it's historic preservation area or historic buildings, but downtown view shed, it's extremely important. And I think when we heard from actually previous city manager that these state regulations would mandate possibly even doubling the 45-foot height restriction, it was shocking to everybody. And I just think there's got to be some way you really can anticipate that. Because yes, it's not likely that people are going to come in with affordable housing, 100% affordable housing, but I do think that is one of the major concerns everybody has. And then I also wanted to ask if you've looked at the city of Sisters in Oregon, because they have some very fine design standards. You might not have to be that strict, but it really has led to a consistency. It's not Disneyland, and I take your point there, Jeff. That really is not what we want. I love innovation, and I love, the houses in Crestone, Colorado. There are every type of architecture there. I call it Hobbit Land because there's some really unique opportunities to see how people use straw bale and they use bottles for houses. It's an excellent place. I love the idea of tiny homes. I hope we can find a place for that eventually. But I do think I'd like a little clarification about whether it's my understanding actually that instead of just staff approving some of these projects, it could be the entire planning commission for certain projects. And if that is the case, where would the line be drawn? So which projects would you act as ministerial review? Do you understand my question?
So first I'll check.
Well, let's let her, I was saying, are we going to do back and forth? Because she's still got her 45 seconds or whatever.
It's okay. I understand. I want to be clear that some projects that are going to be coming through will be a little larger and they'll follow the design standards. But at what point will you want to look at those and which projects will you be deciding upon rather than just leaving them to staff as ministerial? Even if they're planning commission ministerial. Thank you.
Thanks, Vicki. Sorry it took a while. Right, a threshold. I thought that because it was target income, target housing, that has to be ministerial.
Well, ministerial is, really, there's a two-part definition to it. One is that it is to be reviewed in a non-discretionary context. And you can appoint, I mean, and this is something that we can discuss when we get to the review part of this. You can certainly appoint, and this will be City Council's decision, a body to apply the objective design standards to. And in my experience, design committees have been established for this purpose. Another option is to assign the Planning Commission as said body. Another option is to apply to identify the City Council as your design committee to apply these standards. And the second part is that they can only be subject to objective design standards for code compliant projects. So what the legislation does very clearly is remove discretion and deliberation from the process. It's trying to identify and convey a clear set of measurable standards to deliver affordable housing to the marketplace. That's the purpose and intent of it. It's not to say that there isn't some discretion in which concessions we grant to get to that density bonus. One ministerial review body might select the setback. Another might select height to give a developer their due density bonus. So therein lies a little bit of discretion. Which of our standards are we choosing to exercise discretion? Which set of our standards, by extension, would we be conceding to give a developer of an affordable housing project that bonus? Typically, city attorneys, in my experience, city staff, city councils, and planning commissions want to make sure one thing is very clear, and that is that your topical experts, that is, in this case, those related to, with the greatest knowledge base that applies to the subject at hand, i.e. architecture and development, be assigned to said committee. I support that. I think you want a very informed and as educated a body politic as you possibly can derive from your community to apply these standards in a wise and fair manner. I know it's challenging here in small communities to find 5 architects that want to sit on a board. So that's going to be a choice for us all to make when we get there. This body and recommending something to City Council will have a choice to make. Do we say it's the planner's job to use their discretion to pick and choose these concessions, to pick and choose these objective design standards that they're going to require and concede? That recommendation then goes to Planning Commission, and you hold a hearing much like this, which would be subject to Brown Act, which would be subject to public hearings noticing requirements, which come with public review and comment, which come with deliberation, which come with the expectation that public input matters, and that public input will help guide the choices that we make about concessions. So you can quickly see that enters a discretionary realm, which has some regulatory concern with respect to state law and ministerial review. Suffice it to say that when we get there, staff will have provided you choices to make. Is it a single individual, or is it assigned to a chair or a small committee, or you or council? That's a long answer, and I'm sorry for that, but I think context is important when it comes to defining what exactly ministerial is and what it isn't.
No, I think that's helpful, and that did seem to me to show potentially what the trigger is if there are concessions that are required, that would be the trigger to take it out of the planner's hands and put it to likely the planning commission. You know, it's hard, like, as you said, a separate entity.
And as long as we
Seems like a
deliver it within the
stretch.
time frame that's prescribed in state law, then we can meet our mandate. There are regulations in SB 330, for example, which say that you have a fixed number of hearings, that your standards can only be objective and measurable. And I honestly, this state law has been moving so fast that in the last year and a half, I haven't been able to keep track of, but I plan on keeping track of precedent procedure for communities that are falling in line with state law at a more rapid pace than we are. Southern California is a year ahead of us on their 6-cycle housing element, so my previous, 2 cities ago, they've already implemented and practiced review of objective design standards at a committee scale. And so what they did is they pulled together a committee that was based on local experts in the field. So builders, contractors, designers, and they had a committee that met, and there were 3 of them along with staff representation. That was their chosen procedure. There may be others, and I'll certainly review those and give you a report back on what I find. And as far as the Sisters Alpine theme goes, I know Sisters well. I have been following some of their standards, but I don't recall, but I will look into how they have characterized Alpine theme. I think they're pretty close to a sister city, if you will, of Mount Shasta in a lot of ways.
Yeah, we look there, we look at Truckee. There's a few places we look when we're thinking about
Yeah, sure, Truckee's a good one.
not reinventing the wheel.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'll try to capture some of those for you as well.
And I just had one more about if we can preserve the neighbor's access to the sun with setbacks and so on. I mean, that's another one. And in the winter, building a tall structure next to somebody's house that turns into a dark, cold place because they don't have sun anymore.
Yeah, the city of Calistoga, the standard that they did hold on to was the mass step-down, height step-down standard within property lines. So they would, and again, this can be all hardwired within the concessions chapter of the objective design standards to say that when you are conceding standards, you'll do so in the following priority precedent set of concessions, and those could start at the top of the list with mass step down from abutting residential or public streets or view corridors. You concede there first or last, depending on what you want to preserve. You concede horizontal ground plane first or last. You concede roof pitch if we could decide to go there. You'll set those priorities in the concessions provisions within this chapter. And hopefully that would be prescriptive enough that the community and you, Planning Commission and Council, have every reason to believe that the standards, the regulations, give you the architectural performance or character that preserves what you love. Speed limits are exceeded all day long, and that's why there are speed traps. That to say that we can set the standard, and we're hoping that we're allowing it to be violated only by intent. And those standards should be priority intent by you policymakers and recommended to council, I think.
Does anybody else, since our system's been a little wonky, does anybody else want to talk to us?
No hands raised presently.
Okay. David, do you have something to add?
No? I don't think so.
I think we're,
Well,
go ahead.
I think the only thing to add is that what we're doing is only applied to qualifying projects. I think a lot of people think that these design standards are going to be for anything that gets built, and that it's all just going to pass by our oversight and go straight to Jeff or whoever has the ministerial review. And that's not, it's only for qualifying projects.
Touche.
Indeed.
I think everybody just thinks the objective design standards are instantly going to be for anything that comes into the planning department to be built. And that's not the case.
No.
That's it.
Tucson, anything else you want to add?
Just to speak to what Paul brought up about, what is Alpine theme, and we had a little discussion about that in our committee meetings, and our discussion's been about kind of leaving it more wide open as far as the possibilities. We have a lot of diversity and eclectic type of design here, and we don't really want to limit or restrict that it has to be to a very specific style. So the Alpine theme is more of a aspiration, I guess you could say, or to evoke a feeling of what we're looking for, but it's really going to be defined by the materials that are going to be used, stucco, wood, lap siding, stone, some metal. Put together in a way that is aesthetically pleasing with building massing, and so you don't end up with these big flat tall walls, so it's more broken up and with roof lines and
Well, if somebody wanted to
siding.
put like a Space Needle in town, I would think that wouldn't fit Alpine design, no matter how you tweaked it, but
yeah.
something like that, anyway.
So that's kind of what we've been talking about.
Okay.
All right. Oh, sure. We've had a rough
Sure, John,
go.
if you can hear us, raise your hand and we'll let you test your mic.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, go ahead. Oh, wait. Oh, she just wanted to make sure it works?
I
Oh,
just wanted to make sure it was working because of the issue before, but it sounds like whatever Shasta Studios did, they fixed it, so,
yeah, they got it sorted. Okay.
yeah.
So for next
thank you.
time,
Appreciate that.
yeah, next time, hopefully it'll be a little smoother.
Yeah, I'm glad I was able to chat, so thanks.
Yeah, thanks for your input.
Flexibility on that, yep.
Okay, Paul, anything else, since if you have any thoughts about going forward for us?
What, I didn't.
Do you have any thoughts about going forward for us, for our subcommittee?
I would like to see a slightly more strict version of what Tucson's describing. Because, like I said, if you really take a look at everything, it bounces around a lot. To me, like the, what's that motel across from Mike and Tony's, Finlandia, Swiss Holiday, they all used to try to fit that with at least some adornments or roof pitch or whatever, and, it kind of fit in. And then the, what's that other building, that was it the travel agency downtown that has that little thing in the front there? So those little accoutrements just add to that alpine feel or whatever. But some of the buildings are, like, Whiskey Row, that's all flat top buildings, that whole, all downtowns. I don't think there's anything that has a pitch on it in there, is there?
The old, what is it, the Coffee Connection now, isn't that pitched on top? There's
Pitched
Yeah,
back behind.
it's not, yeah, facades. So we just kind of, I guess if you guys are already kind of have a discussion on that, then that is what it is. But it'd be nice to see something that
Well, it's hard to,
identifies this, what that is. We've already let it go to a point where kind of nothing matches already, but just to make it worse, like architecturally speaking, the Yaks building fits the Alpine theme and that what used to be the antique shop next door. But the color paint scheme, remember we had a beef about that a year or two ago, to me that doesn't go. And so I would not want to see a different version of that, every other building or something. I would just like to see something that looks consistent. That's just for me.
You'd like us to retain an alpine theme, even this is, residential.
Well, at least if nothing else on the Mount Shasta Boulevard in Chestnut, And then I couldn't see like a Frank Lloyd Wright creation working anywhere here, except maybe as an institute of learning, and that would be up on Spring Hill Road or down by the net, somewhere out of town. So anyway, that's it for me.
it's hard to define alpine because you can go to all sorts of different alpine communities and every one of them has a different style
I'm
of
thinking like
architecture.
Swiss Chalet when I think alpine, like something like that.
But then you can think like modern,
Rustic modern.
yeah, I think more defined by the masses and the materials on the outside than the shape of the building, to me, defines alpine.
I guess.
Right, well, these aren't for commercial buildings, so unlikely much of this would happen on Chestnut or the Boulevard. This is more likely,
Further out.
further, setback from that. So it's less likely to
Conflict.
to conflict. But then, like, as we know, we've got lots of different kinds of buildings. And, in our design guidelines where we show, well, this is who we are, this is what we have, this is what we like. And we went through that process when we did the 2010. And these are the photos we came up with of what we liked. Okay, anything else we need on our topic this evening? Jeff, do you feel like you've got some ideas to take us to our next subcommittee?
I do. That's helpful. I'll try to summarize these with a response to you all, what I heard tonight. I'll copy the whole commission for the benefit of the two that aren't here. And then between now and our next subcommittee meeting, I'll have responses for you, picking in at some precedent standards, trying to, in a standards way, define alpine theme to a degree, to give you choices around that. I think the character standards, to Chair Findling's comments, that are here that are kind of nested throughout and not particularly within the multifamily standards, they attempt to do alpine theme by summarizing what's out there in the built world. So I'll try to, it's materials, it doesn't really touch on roof pitch, but we could go there. We could play that, we could go district levels.
We're going to have a new affordable housing project with shed roofs.
Yeah.
Aren't those called shed roofs? Mm-hmm. And we liked the design.
It could be an option. You could go, if you're going to do, pick one of three. you know, one of those could be what we approved, one could be an alpine theme, pitch, roof element, facade element that evokes that theme. Something could be, you know, a parapet-style flat roof, which gives you some of what the character on Whiskey Row is, as long as it's got some other appendages to give it, to break down the masts, because Whiskey Row, I know, was characterized by that sort of stoop, arcade, covered walkway. There are options. I think it's worth exploring to see how we could put those in a standard. So I'll do that. I think it's worth talking about the view corridor. I know that's very important to the communities we've heard, and I've heard that before, and off record plenty from you all and from council, and I think it's viable from a public view corridor standpoint. I can tell you that it's hard to protect private views. It's easy to protect public views, and we can establish what those public views are. And I think that's probably the direction we'll go. Is there's some very clear corridors from the public arrival sequence, from our interchanges, and as we funnel into town. And what are those terminal vistas? How do we preserve those? Or how could they, from a development standpoint, be impinged upon? And how do we regulate that mass to make sure they're not? I'll explore that some more. And I think our barometer, to David's point, should be that we're applying these to affordable housing projects only. Let's not make sure that those things our standards are so onerous that we're precluding the delivery of housing. I think we've got to be mindful of that.
Okay.
That's what I've heard.
Thank you. Then I'm going to move on to our next item, number 6, which is commission and staff comments. Commissioners, David, anything?
I don't think so.
Susan?
I was wondering about where the Danco project is at. Do we know, that on the corner of Chestnut and,
Ivy?
and Ivy?
I know that they are still looking for funding to help them with. What I do know for sure is, because I've corresponded with the project manager, their building permit submittal is ready to go.
Okay.
It's a question of funding right now.
To come before us, isn't that putting the cart before the horse? Wouldn't you secure your funding first before you?
Well, usually it's phased, so they'll fund, the entitlements phase, which they funded and executed, and now they're funding construction and marketing, and that can be a heavy lift, particularly in a marketplace like we find ourselves in now. So I get it. We're in a wait-and-see mode right now on that.
Okay.
Anything else?
No.
Paul?
I got a couple things.
What you got?
So first of all, there was a little incident on Lake Street the other day on the Summit Lofts. You can pass that down if you want. Somebody who claimed to be handicapped, who did not possess handicap plates nor current plates, parked on the sidewalk and then proceeded to get in a beef with the police about their ability to be there. So I'm not trying to humiliate anybody. What I'm trying to say, the light went off for me is, gosh, I don't think we have any handicap parking places on all of Mount Shasta Boulevard. We do on Castle. So with the alfresco thing we got going on as a result of the pandemic with the several restaurants, or at least 2 of them, takes up a lot of space there, but maybe that's something we need to look into, how that might fit in the future somehow, because
That person was
They have-
pretty just nervy.
yeah, what?
The Lofts has a handicap parking spot in the alley, I'm pretty sure.
Right, well, their beef was getting from the street to the door, or I don't know, I wasn't there, but my friend who works in proximity to this took this picture for me. And then there's also, come on, go away, puppy.
We have,
There's the other one of it right on the sidewalk. And they're sitting there, they don't have handicap lights, and they're expired. That's the hilarity of the thing. And then they chose to
Did you
argue
see-
with the
did you
police
turn it so
that
they
showed
could
up
see
and
it?
said, guess what, you can't park on our sidewalk. So, anyway, okay, so that's the one thing, maybe we could look at that. Also, has the permit for the nest been actuated? Have they started yet?
Yes, they submitted their building permit
I
last,
mean, did you wave the hand of
Week.
God over it and say, okay, go?
it's under review.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's being reviewed by building official right now.
And then finally, were there more than one candidates for the vacant seat, and have we appointed somebody yet? I saw in that memo or email you sent out today that there was one person, but it seemed like several people had talked about applying for it. I don't know how many showed up for the dance.
Just one.
Okay. So, and then they're going to be reviewed by the city council, and the decision will be
Yeah.
rendered. Okay. I think I pretty much covered everything.
Okay.
all right, thanks. I have a question. One, well, a comment and a question. One, I don't know if you know or have seen one of the many reports that gets done by a city and then ends up on a shelf. We had these fellows who were volunteers, kind of, that worked here, and they developed a stormwater report, and hopefully you can find that. Have you heard of it? That we have a stormwater report? It's a couple years old. Mm-hmm. Did you see it? Oh, good.
Yeah, I've identified its location. Have I reviewed it?
That's
No.
okay. Well, it does talk about, although it took some nudging,
Moments like we're going through right now.
it talked about the most dramatic spot in town, which is up in front of the high school. And I wondered if there's any action on what's going on up there.
They could just put in a ferry, charge money to go to school.
I was going to get my kayak out.
Yeah, it's a fluid situation,
Nah,
isn't it? We'll work on resolving
where's my snare drum?
to the degree that we can do. I know it's a fight with the county.
Because it's initiated up there.
It's their water and
Yeah.
Oh, so
And our
to
problem.
quote
Their
Freddie
mess.
Prinze, it's not my
our problem. And it's not lost on anyone at City Hall, I can tell you that. It's a topic of conversation virtually every day, seasonally, of course, but
At the
Because
water
we're paying
cooler.
for the cleanup is the
yeah.
issue.
Oh, yeah, and who's being charged for the cleanup? So fire is on it, police is on it, city manager's on it. There
It's
have been
dramatic.
loud conversations, shall we say.
I'm sure.
Where does, I have one thing, where's whoever it is, the downtown committee on rearranging behind where Burger Express was, so it's not the RV park?
Oh, yeah, there's people camping there. There are, I know this for a fact. Is
Oh,
that what you're
yeah.
getting at?
Yeah, I mean,
The parking lot RV camp, yeah.
it's like an RV park.
Yeah, well, when it's not there, it's at Shasta. See the same people up there doing the same thing. So it's a couple days up there, a couple days down there behind Burger Express. And I don't know, I've talked to a friend that works here at the city park, and he says no, but at least in the clement weather, I know there's a lot of stagnant, nothing's moving over here. They're staying there. And I don't know if we have anything going on with pushing them out by 10 or 10:30, but we got a lot of campgrounds locally.
Yeah, people don't seem to want to pay. So are they, I guess, is there any action on parking regulation, parking management, overnight parking?
Well, it's, from what Juliana said, you can park and stay in a vehicle for 72 hours, and then they just have to roll a few inches, and they've technically moved. So I think downtown committee was trying to reconfigure the parking lot so it wasn't as
Easy.
easy to park in.
I'll look into it. I don't know offhand. It's the first I've heard of it.
Okay.
You know what we mean by the Burger Express?
Yeah, it's in here.
Yeah, that much I know.
Okay, the old,
Yeah, I'll add it to my list and report back in a more
I
timely fashion.
did see the code enforcement there, though, the other day. I think making his rounds.
Yes, Dan,
The little white
yeah,
Ford Ranger.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that was in my email to you all about the status of some of our code enforcement on signs.
we're really getting
They
code enforcement?
are code enforcement issues. We're expanding the scope of that individual's purview over code enforcement. It's a part of a discussion that I'm having with he and city management about the carrot versus the stick when it comes to code enforcement. Because some of it's explicit and it's a violation, some of it's not, and it requires friendlier tactics. So we're trying to decide which is which, and it's nuanced. So, but it's not lost on us. There's a team on it.
Cool.
And I'll report back.
Thank you. Anything else from you?
I'm actually, I can't take my eye off the notes here. So I think by extension, I can see that people are still typing notes.
Oh, dear. But we've left that.
We have,
Public comment.
we
We
have,
left
but since
that
I've seen them,
agenda item.
they're now my issues.
Oh, well, I mean, I hope that the people that are commenting now
Yeah.
will please continue, get you their information so we get the information. Come to the next meeting when we have it on our agenda, because, the comments and input is most welcome.
Certainly.
But we're just outside of that agenda item now.
Yeah. There is one just coincidentally that does happen to be on my list that I do see flashing on my screen before me. And it is the status of the building official. As you may have picked up at the last planning commission or city council meeting, building official during his 3 minutes of testimony conveyed that, I'll just let you look at the tape and draw your own conclusions, but very explicitly and in plain language, the building official conveyed what it was that he did and what it was that he does not do by his understanding of his scope of services as a contractor, not as an employee of the city. That is my office, if you will, my position, me, and city manager, and other staff who desire greater community customer service, both internal to the city and external to the city, have informed the building official that we desire more, not less, customer service. That was the intent behind terminating that contract and that scope of work, and noticing for public submission or response a request for a proposal from qualified building officials to contract with the city to meet customer service standards that include office hours at City Hall, that include cell phone contact by customers, that include digital review, and that include timely response and accountability and oversight on the part of city staff, namely myself and city manager. We have solicited that work or those proposals. The deadline for submittal is March 6th, I believe. When we get those submissions, we will conduct interviews of qualified applicants, yet to be determined who will be on that interview panel. In typical city fashion, the parameters are established based on the city manager provisions for responsibility and regulatory authority over staff, both employees and contractors. So it will be the decision of the city manager to decide who will be on the interview panel, what the questions will be, and the procedure for selection. When we determine, or when that's determined, then we will convey that to the qualified applicants, and notice will be placed on the website. I'll report back to you, likely report to council as well. That's all I know about that, unless you have questions. Beyond that, the housing element comments are due from HCD March 15th. I received an email from our reviewer saying they want to have a preliminary meeting over the phone in the near future, so we're trying to schedule that with our consultant. What that means to me is they have comments, and they're trying to determine whether or not those require public vetting or if they are clerical and non-substantive in nature. In both of my previous cities where we have adopted and certified housing elements, this has happened. Typically, it's HCD wanting to make sure that the document is internally consistent and clear with the intent of the policy. So in both cases, we were able to make those changes at a staff level and not go back to you all and to council and to public comment. I will ensure that that's the case before we determine what the process is. If they're not, if they are substantive, they are non-clerical, then you will see this document again. The community will see it again, and council will see it again. Don't know yet if that's the case, but we hope to know soon. And that's it. That's all I've got.
Okay. Item number 7, future agenda items. Jeff, we're going to meet again?
I think that we ought to continue with our standard review, our objective design standards review. So I would expect that we'd have this repeat cycle of subcommittee, planning commission, subcommittee, planning commission, and keep this going for the next 3 months. I'm leaving it up to city manager and city council to decide when best to plug them in. And at some point, it'll be up to all of us. And I feel like maybe the next meeting, there's going to be enough substance to engage with an open house, a housing summit, if you will, or a single topic community event. Maybe it's here at a time that's convenient to most. It could be at the next Planning Commission meeting where we open it up to more of an open house style event. We're open as long as we don't have anything else on the agenda, and I think that's fine. We probably won't. But we could turn this into more of a community open house style event where we focus on affordable housing and objective design standards and talk about that. So that'll be up to Chair Findling, I think also to the subcommittee itself. Perhaps you could contemplate that, and at the next meeting we can decide as a group the best course of action to engage the public soon on this.
Yeah, it'd be good to have a kind of a working draft
Yeah.
to share would be lovely.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. Tucson and David's input. Okay, so no projects coming down, nobody's talking to you about anything interesting?
No, I guess the one thing I'll touch on it, the summit lofts and the ground floor changes, they're waiting for a weather window to do their exterior little patio and the screening of the mechanical. But they did submit their plans for the conversion of the ground floor retail space that used to have the guide service in it, and they're going to convert that to another accessible unit.
Another what unit?
Accessible unit, ADA unit.
Oh, you mean make it a hotel room? Is that
Yeah.
what-
So they can park on the sidewalk and get to the unit.
Okay.
There's
So they're
one in the
gonna-
back of the
So they're
hallway.
remodeling the coffee shop already, is what you're saying?
No,
No.
No, the
Where Mountain Guides
Shasta
was.
Guide Service that was in that little pocket space that's up lake.
I thought that,
They'd moved around the corner for a
Oh.
short time
oh, yeah.
in
gotcha.
between spots.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay, got it.
Yeah,
I'm
no
thinking of
change
the
to,
original spot.
Oh, my gosh, I don't know.
no change to the
Okay.
copy. Yeah.
Okay, anything else?
Nope.
Okay, that's it then for our Tuesday, February 20th, 2024, regular Mount Shasta Planning Commission meeting.